today we'll be talking about COVID-19's impact on student stress levels. My name is Nick, and I work with Lindsay, Lexi, Katarina, Jay, and Brian over there. And to get started, we'll talk a little bit about our introduction, our mission statement, and our main study. So to start off, the COVID-19 pandemic has been affecting the daily lives of every individual for over a year now. And the COVID-19 virus has reshaped what it meant for people to work, study, and socialize with others, which has had a direct impact on our mental health. The virus has triggered a wave of mental health problems throughout the country, my bad. And during the pandemic, the numbers of people who reported having symptoms grew from 11% in 2019 to 41.1% in 2021. And the factors we suspected to increase mental health symptoms and stress levels were losses, social isolation, economic decline, and uncertainty. And despite young adults having an increased risk of developing mental health problems, 56% of adults ranging from 18 to 24 reported symptoms of depression and or anxiety during the pandemic. COVID-19 has made the whole world a different place for everyone, including how students learn. Students are forced to make rapid and drastic changes in their learning, most pertaining to the quick adjustments to the online learning styles. Large amounts of students found the transition very challenging for them, and this resulted in an alarming amount of college dropouts, 16 million to be exact. And by researching the way stress has impacted college students, we hope to better understand why stress levels have increased so dramatically in just a little over a year. So as for the mission statement, like I said before, we did investigate the stress levels in college students resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. We did use a questionnaire to collect and analyze our data that pertain to the research, and research looked at what ways the virus had affected the demographic in ways such as the level of concern, socialization patterns, quality of education, and monetary situations. So for our main study, again, the main focus of the research was the stress levels of college students throughout the pandemic. Our survey was distributed to college students from freshmen through graduate level students, primarily at NMU. Our sample was restricted to college students as the stress factors being researched are dependent on being in college. And having our sample come from the population of NMU, it has allowed us to obtain a large spectrum of answers from different demographics as well. But with that, we can talk about our research questions.
Okay, I'll be doing the research questions. So we know that there's added stress that just comes naturally with being a college student, whether that be you're moving away from home or you have hard exams. So we wanted to look at what stress has been caused because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we asked questions such as, were you stressed before the pandemic, and how has the COVID-19 affected your stress levels? And our goal of this is to see what stress factors have happened within the past year and see if there's a way that we can get rid of those to help students be less stressed out. So on the left here are our 3 hypothesis questions. They all have to do with stress and how we can make it easier for college students during this time. And then on the right side are 2 screenshots directly from our survey, and we have ones that allow you to choose multiple answers for the questions, ones that you could rank on a negative or positive scale, and then it's not pictured, but we also had ones that allowed you to rank your experience on a scale of 1 to 10.
I will be talking about the methods we use to analyze our data. We use 2 t-tests to analyze the t-test, the difference in the level of stress each gender has in regards to contracting COVID, and the gender of the survey taker to their ability to focus on schoolwork during the COVID-19 pandemic. We chose t-tests for these because they're going to analyze 2 different variables. The multiple regression analysis is going to analyze 3 of the variables. Our multiple regression analysis was used to determine the survey taker's level of concern with COVID based on age, gender, and year in college. The dependent variable in all 3 of these tests was stress, and the independent variables were gender, age, and college class respectively, with college class, age, and gender all pertaining to multiple regression analysis, and gender and age pertaining to the t-tests.
Okay, so Kat and I will be discussing our results. I'll be talking about our demographic results. So for gender, you can see that it's pretty even between male and females, and then just a few of the other, those who prefer not to say. And then for our age range, it was pretty heavily in the 18 to 21 range. That makes sense, as those are like average ages for undergrad students. And then we can move on to the next slide. And then you can see that for our race and ethnicity, you can see that it was heavily predominantly white students, which makes sense because our survey was predominantly northern students, and northern is a predominantly white campus. And then for a year in college, you can see it going down from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and a graduate level. And our survey answers were mainly from junior and seniors. And then we will have more information.
Okay, so I will talk about our first t-test. So we were comparing in the first t-test gender and how concerned are college students with getting COVID-19. Our independent variable, as was already mentioned, is gender, and our continuous is how concerned are college students. Based on our data, male were less concerned of getting COVID-19, and here are listed our data from our t-test, and based on all of these data, we can say that female are more worried about getting COVID-19 than male students. On the next slide, there is our t-test with the data, mean standard deviation, degree of freedom. Okay, this next slide. So our second t-test was comparing gender again with ability to focus on academic work during COVID-19. Based on these data, we found that male has a lower ability to focus, and so they find it harder to focus on academic work during COVID-19 than female. Second slide. So here again the data, but the thing is, when we compare those two t-test results, that both t-tests have conducted show that while female students are concerned more about getting COVID-19, it wasn't really affected their ability to focus on their academic school. So those two t-tests show that COVID-19 hasn't necessarily had a huge impact on college students' stress level within the last year. And another test, or another analysis what we used was multiple regression. And multiple linear regression was calculated to predict the levels of concern and regarding to COVID-19 based on students that take our survey on their age, gender, and year in college. Here are listed again our significant regression equation data, and our participants predicted level of concern was 1.203, which means that participants' level of concern increased for each of gender by 0.833, for age 0.314, and for year in school was minus 0.144. And based on these data, gender, age, and year in school were significant predictors of how concerned students are about getting COVID-19. And I will pause.
So in conclusion, our goal was to see how COVID-19 has affected the stress levels of students. We also wanted to look at the lack of social interactions due to COVID-19 and how that affects our stress levels. So the questions that we asked included the education level, daily routines, and demographics of our survey takers. And then the answers that we received told us their concerns about COVID, their stress levels due to COVID, and any monetary impacts that they have due to COVID-19. The tests that we used were t-tests and multiple regression analysis, and those tests told us that women were more concerned about COVID-19, and found it harder to focus on their schoolwork during COVID-19 pandemic.
Questions?